What happens when a global movie star sits down on live television and refuses to back down? Make sure to subscribe to the Star Talks and like and comment for more talk show coverage. The studio lights are bright, the audience is already buzzing, and the hosts are settling into their chairs as the show comes back from commercial. There's a sense something big is about to happen. The lead host smiles toward the camera. Welcome back. We have a very special guest joining us today, actor and producer Tom Cruise. He's here to talk about his latest projects and some of the conversations surrounding Hollywood right now. Applause fills the room as Tom Cruise walks out, shaking hands with the hosts and waving to the audience. He looks composed, polite, and focused. He takes his seat. "Tom, welcome," one of the hosts says warmly. "It's great to have you here." "Thank you. I'm glad to be here," he replies, nodding. The applause settles. The tone feels friendly at first. So, another host begins, leaning forward slightly. There's been a lot of discussion about the direction of the industry, streaming, theatrical releases, and how actors are navigating contracts. You've been very vocal in the past about supporting the theater experience. Do you still feel the same way? Tom nods. Absolutely. I believe in the theatrical experience. I think there's something special about people coming together in a room and sharing a story. One of the panelists interjects gently, but some would argue that streaming makes films more accessible. Not everyone can afford movie tickets or lives near a theater. Tom listens carefully. I understand that point. Accessibility is important, but I also think the industry has to find balance. When films are made for the big screen, they should be experienced that way first. The audience murmurs in response. A few claps can be heard. Another host leans in. There are also conversations about how actors use their platforms. Some people feel celebrities should speak out more on political and social issues. Others say entertainers should focus on entertainment. Where do you stand? Tom pauses before answering. I believe people have the right to express themselves, but I also think it's important to be informed and responsible with your words. I try to focus on my work and let that speak for itself. The conversation feels steady, until one of the co-hosts brings up a recent interview where Tom discussed his commitment to discipline and professionalism in the industry. You've spoken before about accountability on set and maintaining high standards. Some critics say that sounds strict or even intense. How do you respond to that? Tom leans forward slightly. His tone becomes firmer, though still controlled. I think professionalism isn't something to apologize for. When people work together on a film, there's a responsibility to each other. Safety, respect, and commitment matter. A brief applause rises again. That's when the tone shifts. One of the hosts says carefully, there have also been discussions about representation in Hollywood, who gets opportunities and how decisions are made. Some viewers feel the industry still has work to do. Tom nods. I agree there's always work to do. Progress is ongoing. I support diversity and new voices. I think storytelling benefits from different perspectives. Another panelist adds, but critics sometimes say the system favors established names. There's a slight pause. Tom responds calmly at first. Experience matters, but I don't believe in closing doors. I've worked with new directors, new actors, new teams. Growth comes from collaboration. The audience reacts with mixed sounds, some applause, some murmurs. Then a co-host asks a more direct question. Tom, some people online have said that high-profile actors should take stronger public stances on major issues. They feel silence can be interpreted as avoidance. What do you think about that pressure? Tom's expression tightens slightly, but he keeps his voice even. I think everyone should make decisions that feel authentic to them. I respect people who speak out. I also respect people who choose a different approach. For me, I prefer to contribute through my work and charitable efforts. The conversation grows more serious. One of the hosts responds, but isn't there a responsibility that comes with influence? Tom answers without hesitation. Influence comes with responsibility, yes. But responsibility doesn't mean everyone has to communicate in the same way. It means being thoughtful and aware. The audience applauds, though the energy feels divided. Then comes the moment. A host, leaning in slightly, says, some viewers think that when celebrities defend industry standards strongly, it can feel dismissive of criticism. For example, when conversations turn intense, people want openness, not defensiveness. Tom straightens in his chair. I'm not defensive, he replies firmly. I'm passionate. There's a difference. The room quiets. Another host quickly steps in, trying to keep balance. We appreciate passion. That's part of why audiences love your films. But on this show, we also encourage dialogue. Tom nods. And I'm here to have that dialogue. The audience applauds, sensing the tension but also the civility. One panelist asks, if someone disagrees with your perspective on the industry, what would you say to them? Tom looks directly at the panel. I'd say let's talk about it. Respectfully. The industry is complex. There's room for improvement. There's also room to acknowledge what works. There's a brief moment where the conversation feels like it could escalate, but instead, it shifts into a more reflective tone. The lead host smiles slightly. That's fair. And it sounds like even when there are disagreements, you value the conversation. Yes, Tom replies. Dialogue is important. The audience claps again. But just as the segment seems to stabilize, one host raises a final question for the block. Tom, do you ever feel misunderstood in these public discussions? The question hangs in the air. Tom takes a breath. Yes, he says simply. Sometimes. But that's part of being in the public eye. I focus on my work, my team, and the people I collaborate with. The applause grows louder this time. The camera pans slightly as the hosts nod. The tone has shifted from tension to a more reflective debate, but it's clear the conversation isn't finished. The energy in the studio suggests there's more to unpack. The lead host glances at the monitor. We're going to continue this discussion after the break. Don't go anywhere. The audience claps as the show cuts to commercial, and the studio buzzes with quiet conversation. The moment feels real, not explosive, but intense in the way live television often is when strong personalities meet strong opinions. Tom sits back in his chair, speaking softly with one of the producers off camera. The hosts regroup at their desk, preparing for what comes next. And as the cameras fade out for the break, it's clear the discussion has only just begun. The show returns from commercial, the audience clapping as the theme music fades. The camera settles back on the panel. The lead host smiles, though the energy in the room is different now, more focused. Welcome back. We're continuing our conversation with Tom Cruise about industry standards, public responsibility, and the role of celebrities in today's climate. Tom sits upright, hands folded loosely, attentive. One of the hosts turns toward him. Before the break, you mentioned dialogue. Let me ask you directly. When criticism comes your way, especially online, how do you handle it? Tom nods. I try to separate constructive feedback from noise. If there's something useful, I listen. If it's personal attacks, I don't engage. The audience reacts with a mix of applause and murmurs of agreement. Another panelist leans in. But sometimes criticism isn't just noise. Sometimes it's people asking for change. Tom responds calmly. And change is part of progress. I'm not opposed to change. I just believe it should be thoughtful and collaborative. The tone remains steady until one of the co-hosts shifts the focus slightly. You've built a reputation for being very committed to your craft. Some people admire that intensity. Others say it can create pressure on collaborators. How do you respond to those concerns? Tom takes a moment before answering. I care deeply about what I do. I expect professionalism from myself and from the teams I work with. But that doesn't mean I don't respect people. On the contrary, respect is at the core of collaboration. The audience applauds again. One of the hosts raises an eyebrow gently. There are reports sometimes about high expectations on film sets. Without getting into specifics, can you clarify what your approach looks like? Tom answers firmly but measured. My approach is about preparation and safety. When you're working on large productions, especially action films, there's a lot involved. I believe in preparation. I believe in doing things correctly. That's how you protect everyone. The room quiets slightly, listening. A host nods. So for you, it's about standards. Yes, he says. Another panelist shifts the topic. Let's talk about the broader conversation. Many actors today use social media to directly address fans. You've chosen a more traditional approach. Why? Tom smiles faintly. I prefer personal interaction when possible. I also think not every thought needs to be public. Sometimes it's better to focus on work and let projects speak. The audience claps lightly, but then one host leans forward, tone sharpening just a bit. Some viewers feel that when celebrities avoid certain public discussions, it can feel like distance. Do you worry about that perception? Tom responds without raising his voice. I understand perception matters, but I can't control how every comment is interpreted. I can only act with integrity. The applause grows stronger. The lead host jumps in to keep momentum balanced. Integrity is something audiences connect with. But let me ask something more personal. Do you ever feel the weight of public expectations? Tom exhales gently. Of course. Anyone in the public eye feels that. But I've been doing this for a long time. I focus on the work. That's what keeps me grounded. The audience responds warmly. Then the conversation turns slightly more pointed. One of the co-hosts says, "There are people who believe the entertainment industry should take stronger collective positions on social issues. Do you think actors have a responsibility to lead in that way?" Tom considers carefully. "I think leadership can take many forms. Some lead by speaking publicly. Others lead by example in their craft, their professionalism, or their philanthropy. There isn't just one model." There's applause, though it's mixed with thoughtful silence. Another host interjects quickly, sensing momentum. "But when you're as visible as you are, does staying neutral send a message?" Tom replies calmly, but with emphasis. Choosing not to take a public stance on every issue isn't neutrality. It's a decision about focus. The room quiets again. The audience seems divided, some nodding, others listening intently. One host leans back slightly. "It sounds like you're saying everyone should choose their own path in terms of public engagement." "Yes," Tom says. "Authenticity matters." The conversation begins to soften, with the hosts shifting toward lighter ground. "So let's talk about your fans," one host says. "You've had audiences for decades. What do they mean to you?" Tom's expression brightens. "They mean everything. Without audiences, none of this exists. I'm grateful for their support." The audience applauds enthusiastically. Another host smiles. "You've had moments in your career where the industry changed around you, new technology, new distribution models. What keeps you motivated?" "Storytelling," he answers immediately. "That's the foundation." The energy in the studio becomes warmer. But just when it feels like the segment is settling into a comfortable rhythm, one host revisits the earlier tension. "Earlier, there was discussion about criticism and standards. If someone in this audience disagrees with you on industry issues, what would you want them to understand?" Tom looks out toward the crowd, not defensive, just steady. "I'd want them to know that my intentions come from commitment to the craft and respect for collaboration. Disagreement is part of healthy conversation." The audience applauds, louder this time. The lead host nods. "That's a fair point. Debate can be constructive." There's a sense that the intensity has not disappeared, but it has evolved. The conversation has moved from confrontation to explanation. A producer signals from off-camera, indicating time. "We'll have more after this," the host says, smiling at Tom. "Don't go anywhere." As the camera begins to pull back for the break, the panel exchanges quick glances. The discussion has been spirited but controlled. Live television at its most real. Strong opinions, interruptions, clarifications, and mutual respect trying to hold the center. Tom remains composed, leaning slightly toward the hosts as they prepare for the next segment. The audience continues to buzz, some discussing what they just heard. And as the show fades to commercial again, it's clear the conversation still has layers to unpack, and the intensity may rise again before it's over. The show returns from break with a noticeable shift in energy. The audience is attentive, and the hosts look ready to move the conversation forward without losing control of it. The lead host looks toward the camera. "We're back with Tom Cruise, and we've been talking about industry standards, public responsibility, and how celebrities engage in conversations today." Tom nods politely, posture steady. One of the co-hosts leans in. "Tom, I want to circle back to something. Earlier, you said you focus on your work rather than every public issue. Some viewers feel that silence can be interpreted in different ways. How do you balance that?" Tom responds evenly. "I think balance is important. I support causes that matter to me personally, but I don't believe every public conversation requires every public figure to participate." The audience murmurs in response. Another host raises a hand slightly. "But when people look up to you, they may want guidance." Tom acknowledges the point. "And I respect that. But guidance can come from example, from professionalism, from mentorship. It doesn't always have to come from statements." Applause spreads through the room. The tone remains serious but not hostile. One panelist shifts the discussion. "Let's talk about collaboration. You've worked with many directors and actors over the years. What makes a successful working relationship for you?" Tom answers quickly. "Communication, preparation, mutual respect. Everyone has to feel safe expressing ideas." The hosts nod. Have you ever had disagreements on set? Another host asks. Tom smiles slightly. Of course. Creative people disagree. That's normal. The audience laughs softly. And how do you resolve those disagreements? The host continues. By talking through them, he says. Listening is key. There's applause again. The conversation begins to feel less confrontational and more conversational. But one host decides to address the earlier tension directly. There was a moment earlier where things felt a little intense. Some viewers online have already reacted to that exchange. When conversations get passionate like that on live TV, how do you view it? Tom replies without hesitation. I view it as healthy discussion. Passion isn't the same as conflict. If people care about something, they should be able to express that. The audience responds positively. Another panelist adds, and you're comfortable with people disagreeing with you? Yes, Tom says. Absolutely. That draws strong applause. The lead host smiles toward him. That's important, because talk shows exist to bring different perspectives together. Tom nods. And I appreciate being invited to share mine. The room feels lighter now. A co-host shifts the tone toward audience engagement. We've been hearing reactions from viewers throughout the show. Some say they appreciate your clarity. Others say they wish public figures would be more direct on certain topics. It seems like there's a broader cultural conversation happening. Tom listens carefully. I understand that, he says. Society evolves. Conversations evolve. But not every person in the spotlight will approach engagement the same way. Applause follows. Another host asks, do you think the entertainment industry today is more divided in public discussions than in the past? Tom pauses briefly. I think social media has changed how conversations happen. It amplifies voices, which can be positive, but it can also intensify disagreements. The audience murmurs in agreement. One panelist leans forward. So would you say the pressure on public figures is greater now? In some ways, yes, Tom replies. The speed of information changes things. The hosts nod thoughtfully. The lead host looks at him. Despite everything we've discussed, what would you want people watching today to take away from this conversation? Tom answers calmly. That dialogue is valuable. That people can disagree and still respect each other. And that commitment to your work matters. The audience applauds warmly. One of the co-hosts smiles. That's a message we can all agree on. The energy in the room feels stable, not dramatic but engaged. The earlier intensity has transformed into a substantive debate, the kind that often defines live television. The hosts begin wrapping the segment. We appreciate you being here and having this conversation, the lead host says. Thank you for the opportunity, Tom replies. The audience applauds again, some standing slightly to get a better view as cameras move around the stage. There's a brief moment of off-mic conversation between Tom and one of the hosts, with friendly expressions and handshakes. The atmosphere suggests the debate, while strong, remained within the bounds of professional exchange. As the segment closes, the hosts look toward the camera, signaling the transition to the final part of the show. And the audience continues reacting, discussing the conversation, some nodding in agreement, others still debating quietly among themselves. The show prepares for its final segment, where the aftermath and reactions will be addressed. The show returns for its final segment, and the studio feels different now, more reflective than tense. The audience is still engaged, but there's a sense that the conversation has reached its natural conclusion. The lead host looks into the camera. We've had a very honest discussion today with Tom Cruise about industry standards, public responsibility, and the role of celebrities in today's conversations. Before we wrap, we want to talk about what happens next, both in the studio and outside of it. Tom sits calmly, listening. One host turns to him. After conversations like this, do you usually check how people respond? Tom smiles slightly. I'm aware of public reaction, yes, but I try not to get distracted by it. I focus on the work. The audience applauds lightly. Another panelist says, social media can react very quickly. Sometimes clips go viral within minutes. Tom nods. That's the reality today. The lead host addresses the viewers directly. Moments like the one earlier, where opinions were strongly expressed, often spark online discussion. The audience murmurs in agreement. One co-host adds, some viewers may say the exchange was intense. Others may say it was exactly the kind of dialogue talk shows are meant to have. Tom responds simply, I think it was respectful. We had different viewpoints, and we discussed them. Applause rises again. The host continues, Since this aired live, there will likely be reactions, clips shared, headlines written, conversations online. Tom remains composed. That's part of being in this industry. Another panelist leans forward. If you could say one thing to viewers who may have strong opinions about what they heard today, what would it be? Tom looks toward the audience. I'd say listen to the full conversation before forming conclusions. Dialogue is more complex than short clips. The audience responds with supportive applause. The lead host nods. That's a fair reminder. The energy in the room is now calm but engaged. The earlier tension has settled into thoughtful discussion. The show transitions into a brief reflection from the panel. One host says, "Today we saw disagreement, but we also saw listening. That's important." Another adds, "Live television isn't scripted conversation. It's real people responding in real time." Tom smiles slightly at that. The lead host turns to him. "Before we let you go, is there anything you'd like to add about your upcoming projects?" Tom discusses his current film work briefly, thanking the crew and audience for their support. The tone is professional and focused on his craft. Applause fills the studio once more. As the segment closes, the hosts thank him again. The audience rises for a standing ovation, not because of controversy, but because of the full exchange, the debate, the interruptions, the clarifications, and the respectful disagreement that unfolded live. After the show airs, clips begin circulating online. Viewers share different perspectives. Some highlight Tom's defense of professionalism and industry standards. Others focus on the panel's questions about public responsibility. Comment sections fill with discussion, not outrage, but debate. Entertainment blogs summarize the exchange, noting the intensity of the conversation, but also emphasizing that it remained controlled and civil. Fans post reactions across social platforms, quoting lines from both sides. Back in the studio after filming ends, the hosts and Tom exchange handshakes and light conversation. There's no lingering hostility, just the shared experience of live television. Moments like this often become part of the broader cultural conversation, not because of dramatic conflict, but because they reflect real differences in perspective. The audience leaves still talking, some debating the points raised, others appreciating the openness of the discussion. That's what live talk shows are built on: real voices, real reactions, and real dialogue. And for viewers watching at home, the takeaway is simple. Strong opinions can coexist in the same room when people are willing to listen as well as speak. Now we want to hear from you. What did you think about this talk show exchange? Did you agree with Tom's perspective or with the panel's questions? Share your opinion in the comments and subscribe to the Star Talks for more real talk show stories.